Hey everybody, welcome to Mistake Man. I've got a new project on my bench. It's a bit of an unusual project compared to other videos I've done in the past, but I was having some fun with it, so I decided to go ahead and make a video about this project and share it with everyone. So what I have here is a map that I got as a gift for my wife. So what I've got is a map of Skyrim, but it's created in a style of like a national park map. And that brings together two things that both my wife and I love. We love traveling and visiting national parks. We've got quite a few here in Utah where we live. And it combines that with the world of Skyrim, which is a game that we both love playing. So even to this day, it's quite an old game, but its replay value is immense. We still have fun with it. So when I saw this map, I knew I had to get it for her, and she loves it. But I decided I wanted to go ahead and make a frame for this and have a little bit of fun with the frame itself. I don't necessarily want to actually construct the frame itself. My idea is more to just find an off-the-shelf frame that I can buy, but then I'm just going to decorate it to make it more interesting than just a plain old frame and give it some Skyrim flair. This picture is 20 inches wide by 16 inches tall, but I do want to have a mat around it, so I got a frame that's 24 inches wide by 20 inches tall, which is not going to fit in the view of the camera, but this is it. It's just kind of a plain black, not exactly like completely black. It's got a bit of a weathered look to it. And then it's got not a black mat, it's kind of a gray, almost brownish gray color. I wanted to take some design ideas from the world of Skyrim to dress up the picture frame. I had a few ideas, but what I settled on is something like this. Here's basically just a printout of the design that I made. The idea is to kind of dress up the corners of the frame with some custom pieces, and the design, the look of these corner pieces is inspired by the Nordic carved armor and weapons that you can get in the game. I've just always loved that design of the armor and weapons in that style, and I think the design just says this is from Skyrim. So the idea was to kind of maybe make it look like it's a bit of armor on the corners. And so I've got multiple layers going on here to just kind of show like overlapping plates to kind of evoke the idea of overlapping plates of armor. And then just with some of the pattern of lines crossing back and forth and weaving over and under as if it was cord or not. And same idea for the other corners. I didn't want to go overboard. I didn't want to go too crazy and too intricate. So I did kind of the top two left and right corners are the multiple layers, almost like 3 different layers of plate. But for the bottom corners, I just did 2 layers of plate. And with maybe not as intricate of a design, just to kind of, I don't know, I liked the feel and the balance of it. And then in the center of the bottom part of the frame, to actually put the Imperial Dragon symbol that's so iconic of Skyrim, and then just a little bit of the knot design to either side of that. And in fact, you might recognize that as the ends of the compass bar that's on the top of your screen as you're wandering around Skyrim. I followed that same design for each end of that. I did find a 3D model of the Imperial Dragon symbol, and I intend to 3D print that. Okay, I was able to get some sheets of styrene in the sizes that I needed. I'd never seen 3mm thick stuff before, but I was able to find some. This is 3.2 millimeters or 1/8 inch thick, which is fine. That'll do just fine. So that's some chunky styrene. Those aren't sheets of styrene at this point now. Those are plates, styrene plate. And then I've got some 2mm. I've had some of that before, and I've used a little bit of it, but I'm going to need a bit more for this project, so I got some more. And then I was able to also find some rods that are 2mm thick by 2mm wide. So 2x2, and yeah, they just come in, I think, 14-inch. So I got several packages of these. I kind of went through my design and figured out how much length I had in all those twisty designs and made sure I got enough for all of that. I also printed the Empire Dragon symbol. The original 3D model that I was able to find was just the symbol itself. I added the background that it's in, and then just it kind of sticks out just a little bit from that. And I printed it in black resin. This is a SLA print here. And I wanted to paint it a silver color, but not the same kind of color as like the corners of the frame. Those are going to be more of like a steel color, you know, like what armor is made out of. But I wanted for the dragon symbol to really pop, and so I wanted something shiny, like polished silver or chrome. So I tried a few different paints to see what I liked. I tried just like a regular aluminum. I think that's a Tester's aluminum right there, which was a little bit too dull for what I wanted. And then I also tried this Molotov. There's the name there, Molotov liquid chrome mirror effect, and that was really, really good. That was nice and shiny. So I tried that, and then I also was curious about this other paint that I found called this Ultra Shining Fluid Silver Foil. And it comes like this. Anyway, I don't know which one's which, I don't remember, but they were both very shiny. So I ended up going with this to paint the actual dragon symbol, and it turned out really good. I like that result's exactly what I was looking for. Now this project is a surprise for my wife. I'm trying to work without her basically seeing what I'm working on, so I got to keep that under wraps. That would give it away. So I'm just going to keep that under a lid over there. Okay, so I've cut some pieces out for the middle little bracket that goes around the Imperial Dragon symbol. And it's going to be 2 layers of 2mm thick. So I've cut out the base layer here, and then the top layer is going to be mostly going to be made out of the styrene rods. These, for all of the kind of knotted design that goes around. But for this portion here, this was a little bit wider than 2mm, and so I just cut that out of a sheet. And these little parts here are obviously not going to be made out of this, so that was also part of it. And then so I'll just use these to kind of build up the rest of the design from here and kind of go around, do the knot design, and come back on both sides. And then the dragon symbol kind of fits in there like that. So something like that. I think I decided I'm going to do a black background behind the raised knot pattern. For the rest of the armor, I'm not going to do like a black background behind those. It's going to be darker, kind of in line with what you see with the patterns on the weapons, where it's kind of like darker in the background, like it's collected, it's a recessed area, so it's kind of collected oil and grime and whatever, dirt. So it's darker, but it's still like, you can still tell that it's like metallic, but just weathered. But on this, I think I am going to do an actual like black background. I'll paint it black the idea there is to mimic the inspiration behind this portion of the design, where it's the compass bar on top of your screen while you're playing. It's a black background with like white in front of it. So anyway, okay, I need to cut out the layers from this 3mm sheet. The bottom layer of the top corners is too big to fit on one of these sheets. It's just too long on one side. It would fit fine this way, but not this way. So I had to basically split it down the middle. So I've got these sheets here that represent the different layers that need to be cut out of the 3mm. So this one up here, I've labeled it, this is the bottom corner, bottom layer. And so I kind of split that, so this edge would match up with this edge over here to make a, kind of this 90-degree corner. I basically laid this out in a way that would fit onto one of these sheets. So these sheets are 6 inches by 12 inches. And I don't have that size paper, so I had to print it out on regular A-size paper, 8.5 by 11. So this is 11 inches, but I need 12 inches, right? So it went onto the next sheet. Fortunately, my design software does have the ability to do this tiling effect, where I set up the actual sheet in the design software as 6 inches by 12 inches, so that I could properly nest these pieces onto the actual styrene. But then because I'm printing it on 11-inch tall paper, then I can tell it to tile it, and it adds these little markers in the corners that allow me to line up one sheet against the other. So if I align those markers on top of each other, then it should put this geometry in the correct space, in the correct place relative to this geometry. And I have found that the best way to accomplish the actual aligning of these marks is to just get a paper hole punch and punch a hole in the paper right about in the middle. It doesn't have to be exact, just as long as you hit all 4 of those cross hatch marks. That was way off. But again, as long as I've got as long as the hole is crossing all 4 of those cross hatch marks, then what I can do is place that over the top of the other sheet and line up those marks. Then when they're all lined up, then I know I've centered one on the other. Let's see if I can manage to get this one a little closer to the center. Better. As you can see, that makes it really easy to center those marks. Then once they're centered up, I just tape the 2 pieces of paper together. So I didn't mention this yet, but my idea is to use this as a cutting template. So I printed these parts at full scale, and now I'm going to affix this complete sheet to the sheet of styrene. And I'm going to use this spray adhesive. Just put that on the back of this. Okay, put a layer of that adhesive on the back. Okay, so I do need to be kind of precise about how I put this on there, because there was not a lot of extra room to the outside. From top to bottom, the points were pretty close to the edges, and then these edges here were pretty close to the edges of the styrene sheet. So I should have, before I sprayed the adhesive on there, I should have probably cut this paper down to width just so I can actually see where those edges are a little better. Because now it's all sticky. Oh no. Hmm. Mm-hmm. No. That's way off. Damn it. Okay, I got that on there. That was a pain. Because there really is not a lot of room for error here or there. Probably would have been easier if I had cut out each of these shapes individually and then just placed them one by one to kind of nest them in there. Oh well, I got it. And if you've got one of these little tools, it's got a funny name, but I can't remember what it is. But it's useful. Obviously the paper's not going to be on there permanently, but we don't want it coming up while we're trying to cut these out. Uh-oh. Looks like I trapped something underneath there. What is that? A little scrap of paper, a little offcut. I didn't even notice that was there. That's fine. Won't cause any problems. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is actually mark the plastic. I'm going to use just a sharp hobby knife and a straight edge to cut through the paper just to mark where those are permanently in the plastic, just in case while I'm cutting, if the adhesive gives way and the template comes off, then that's okay. I've still got the actual parts marked. Okay, now to saw. Okay, here we have it. Here's all our pieces. Those are the pieces of the corners. And these scraps here I'll be using later down the road. For this piece here, I'm going to be using this actual printed out sheet of paper as a cutting template for this knot pattern on the sides. So I'm going to cut this piece out. This template has two jobs. One is just serve as a guide for how I know how long these pieces need to be cut and at what angles to kind of make this go across this pattern. So I'm going to glue this down, and then I'm going to basically take my my rod of styrene, lay it across there, figure out, okay, this needs to be cut there, so I'll cut it there, and then move to the next one, cut it there, move to the next one, cut it there, and then so on, just across the entire pattern. Then once I have all of the pieces of strip cut out, the second job of this template is to help me know where to place them on this piece. So with that in mind, I can't really use one of them to do both jobs, so I printed out two of them, cut them both out. One of them is going to get temporarily adhered to the base, and then I'm going to mark out everywhere that needs to go. And the other one I'm going to use for the strip layout. Okay, so for this one, I need to basically lay this on top of this as neatly as I can. So I'm actually going to go around with the hobby knife and cut out just around that pattern there. Okay, there we go. Got it all cut out. Now this will match up, should match up pretty well with what I've already cut out. Okay, looks good. So I'm going to stick this paper template to the plastic. So I basically want adhesive all the way out to the edges on this. It doesn't really give me anywhere to hold on to it without spraying my hand. So I'm going to use this folded sticky note to just kind of grab a corner of that. So this is the side, this is the edge of the note that has the adhesive on it. So just kind of stick it together like that. There'll be a little spot that doesn't have any of the spray adhesive, but that's fine. It gives me something to hold on to. So what I need to do now is mark out each of these lines, and I'm just going to use a sharp hobby knife. I'll get a straight edge and then just follow along those edges, cut into the plastic below, go over it a couple times to get a nice deep cut, relatively deep, so that when I pull the mask off there's going to be some nice sharp straight edges. Okay, so I've gone through and cut around all the lines, so now I can remove this template. Okay, there we go. There's the pattern I was looking for. That'll help me place the little bits of rod once I've got them all cut out. For cutting out the strips, I'm going to take this, use the spray adhesive, stick it to this piece of scratch paper, then I'm going to spray some more adhesive over the top side of this so that I can stick this piece of styrene to it, cut it where I want, and then that's going to hold it in place. And that way I can just kind of work my way around, and it should hold these pieces in place. That'll keep it so that when I make the cut, the piece doesn't just go flying off into space and get lost. And it's also going to help me build it up as I go to help me cut the angles just right. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, there it is. Now it's got all over the place here, and to keep myself from constantly having to pull my hands off of it, I'm just going to use some scratch paper to kind of cover up that goo. Okay, so the idea here is I take my strip, lay it on the spot where I want to start. Now to join this piece with the next piece that's going to go this direction, I've got several options for cutting it. I could try to like half the angle between those, to do like a miter cut, but then those are problematic because then if your angles are slightly off, then they're not going to match. I'd have to guess on what that angle is every time. Instead, I could just cut here, so right about there-ish. I could cut at that angle, and that would work, but then that would just leave me at the tiniest little bit for this. So for these short ones, I kind of want to give them as much length as I can. So instead, I think I want to cut it across here. Let me make that more clear. So instead of cutting here, I'll cut it here. Let me just cut it and show you what I mean. So to cut the angle, I'm going to take the tip of the blade and go, the line that I want to cut's right there, and it's got basically a parallel, a collinear line that goes all the way out to here. So I've got that as a reference, kind of. So I'm going to put the point of the blade at that point there, and then just visually line up to be parallel to those lines. And then I'm going to lay it into the plastic and then cut through. I'm obviously not going to do that in my hand. I need to set that down, but I wanted to show you that. Okay, so I've made that cut. I'm going to leave this piece in place and take off the remainder. The nice thing about this approach is that now this piece, the remainder piece, I can continue on, and the angle that I need is already cut, right? So this is essentially what I'm going to do, is I'm going to take that piece. It was cut like this, but now I'm just going to flip it around. And now that angle should match up with what I want there. More or less like that. So yeah, there's a bit of a gap there, more than I wanted. I didn't cut that one very well. I'll be more careful on the rest of them, but that's the idea. So now I just go to the part here where the weave looks like it's going under, so this piece is going to stop early about there and then pick up again here. And then I'll just work my way around the pattern doing that same idea. Done a couple more here, same idea. That one, I think I can cut it a little bit long on this end, a little short on this end. I might be able to scoot that one down so that the lines match up at the outer edge. But if not, I can just recut that piece. But that's the idea. There we go. There's the first side. I was able to be a little more precise, a little more careful when I was not trying to do it on camera. So I actually went back and fixed the first one that I did. So now I'll just rinse and repeat for the other side. Alright, I've made a little bit of progress. When I was cutting out these pieces, I kind of got on a roll and just glued them all in place. So there we go with all the pieces in place. Get our little dragon symbol here. Put that in there. That's going to look cool. See, I'm going to paint this background black, and then the knot work is kind of a metallic color, so I think that's going to look pretty good. I'm speaking in more hushed tones than usual because, as I've mentioned before, this project is a surprise for my wife, and she's in the next room. I don't know how much she can hear, so keeping it on the down low as much as I can. I also got the pieces cut out of the 3mm thick sheet. So that's these pieces here. And I've glued them together along the miter joint and cleaned up a little bit. Just kind of sanded the faces to kind of smooth it out. This one's got a bit of a gap on the bottom, but this is going to be the bottom, so I'm not worried about that. This is the side that's going to be seen, so I've got that cleaned up. And then I've also got these pieces here that are out of the 2mm thick styrene, and those are just little accents that go on like that on the top corner. Same idea on the bottom corner, like that. So I can start cutting out the knotwork for that bottom piece, like that, and I'm just going to follow the same process that I used for cutting and templating this. That worked out really well, so I'm going to keep doing it. Okay, for this next part, all I got to do is start removing these from my sticky template, putting them into place, and then I use this extra thin plastic cement. I like the extra thin because then I can just put the piece in place, touch it with the cement, and the cement will wick underneath. So basically just get that lined up along that edge. Get some on the brush. I like to just touch a little bit on each end. That way it starts holding in place while I can fine-tune the placement of it. Okay, that looks pretty good as far as placement goes, so now I'm going to go through and glue it the rest of the way. So get some of this thin cement, and then just run it along there. Nice and generous. Let it wick underneath. Then I just move on to the next one and then make my way around. I've got most of the pieces cut out now. I cut out these pieces that are going to go around the border like that. Those are cut out of the 2mm thick sheet. These are wider than the 2mm wide strips that I used for the rest of this, so I had to cut these out of sheet. Something like that. They'll just go around the border. Pieces for that one. And then same pieces over here for this one. still got to put the, I still got to lay down the knot pattern on that. Also got these pieces here that are going to go alongside like that and that. So most of the cutting's done. All that I have left to do is there's going to be a piece that runs along the side like that, and then a piece, the same idea on the other side there, just on the outside to kind of box that in, just to make it look like, I don't know, more substantial than just a thin piece on top, sitting on top of the frame, but it'll kind of encompass the corner. These are scraps of the 3mm sheet left over from cutting all these pieces out. I just have to cut these down to size, and then cutting will be done, and I can just finish putting everything together. Okay, the pieces are built. I went through and cleaned up all of them as much as I could, as much as I wanted to. I went over all of the edges with a hobby knife, just kind of scraped at a 45-degree angle just to chamfer all of those edges, because they were all just a little bit too sharp and just didn't have a finished look that I was going for. So I chamfered all of the edges, and I think it looks nice. I think it's going to look even better when it's metallic, because then I think those chamfered edges will catch highlights nicely. And then the next major step before I do any painting is going to be doing the weathering and the distressing. I had a couple of ideas on how I might do that using a couple different tools, and I just did some practice on the back of this piece here. As you can see, there's some like gouges, some scratches, a little bit of melting. So I've got a few tools I can use. I've got this rotary tool with this bit on it. It's kind of a milling bit, but it's got a nice sharp edge around that top edge there, and that gives me some options for, distressing, gouging, scratching. I can also do some finer scratches with a hobby blade. Even if I want really fine scratches, I can just use the sharp edge of the blade, or if I want deeper, wider scratches, I can use the back of the blade to just kind of gouge out scratches like that. And I also tried using the hot tip of my soldering iron to melt a few places, and that works too. It leaves just kind of a different weathering pattern than I get with like the sharp tools. You can see in a few places where I use that kind of in the middle there, and it does, it's melting the plastic. So when you push the hot tip into the plastic, it kind of melts and pushes the plastic out of the way and leaves ridges. So I do have to clean that up, but that's not hard to do. I just kind of have to either just scrape it off with a blade or sand it down. But yeah, it just kind of gives a different style of distressing and damage. So I gave it a go on the front of this centerpiece here. You can see just in kind of random places I did scratches and cut parts away and melted in a few spots. Again, it's not super easy to see in this just diffuse white color that it is now, but I think painting it metallic will definitely make those stand out more, and also just doing some washes or other kind of weathering to darken in other places will also accentuate those. So I've just got to do weathering to the rest of this. Okay, I have gone through each of the four corners, added the damage and distressing. I think it should look pretty good. Just need to get it painted with some metallic, which I think will really highlight the damage. It'll really stand out more than it does against the white here. But anyway. So yeah, I am happy with that. Now I think it's time to paint them. So my original goal with this is to make these look like they're made from armor, or they're inspired by armor. So they need to be painted a metallic color, a steel color. The last time I was at the hobby store, I did see this color here, this Vallejo oily steel. And I liked the look of it. The size of the metallic flakes in here are not too sparkly. They've got a nice shine to them. So I decided I'd give this one a try. And before I put the metallic color on, I want to put a black base coat. So I'm going to use just this Tamiya flat black XF1. I like the color of the steel. It's kind of a dark metallic color on the darker side of things, as opposed to like a bright silver or aluminum. Now this is all basically kind of monotone right now because it's just the steel color. I do plan to do kind of a dark wash over it to have it settle down into the damage marks that I've added to the plastic, and also just kind of, darken a few spots up, make it a little splotchy, a little dirty and used looking. Not too crazy, but a little bit. And then I think I probably will do a bit of a brighter metallic in places, just in some highlights. Maybe I'll dry brush it. I'll see. I'll test that to see if that's a look that I like. But just to kind of hit the high points, or just to highlight in a few places with just a brighter metallic than this. Just to kind of give it like spots where it's been rubbed against or freshly damaged, and some of that kind of weathering, dirty weathering, is worn away and polished down to the brighter metal that's underneath. I got the painting and weathering all finished up. I think that turned out really good. I'm really happy with those results. Like, that looks like plate armor to me. Yeah, I think it turned out really good. So just to kind of recap on what I did, first did a base coat of the black paint, and then painted the whole thing with the oily steel. And then for some of the dirty, kind of grungy look, I just used this black wash. I thinned the black wash a little bit and applied it in several coats to the recessed area here. I wanted that to be darker to make the kind of knot patterns stand out more. So I did that, and I kind of overdid it on purpose. I made it go a little bit too darker than what I wanted. And then I came back in with some of the oily steel and a dry brush and just kind of filled in kind of in the spots in the middle, so it left most of the kind of grungy, darker look up against the edges. I guess kind of how you might expect if you were oiling your armor to kind of maintain it, and over time stuff would kind of build up in the recessed areas, but the higher spots would get wiped off with use and would look shinier. Also applied the wash just in several areas around, on the sides and other areas, just to kind of give it a less uniform used look. And then for some highlights, I used this Tester's metallic silver, which is kind of a really bright metallic color. And I used it sparingly, mostly just dry brushed along the edges of all the pieces, and then in some spots just to brighten up certain areas. See maybe a little bit there where the light is catching highlight. And I gotta say, this last step of just doing that little bright metallic highlight in just a few spots really makes it pop. I don't know if the camera's really doing it justice, but in person it makes it look like it's made out of metal. So overall, the weathering really wasn't too difficult. It's a pretty easy process, and I ended up with the result that I'm really happy with. Did the same treatment to this piece, and as you can see, I've got the dragon symbol piece installed. I just put a strip of styrene on the back and cemented that in place just to hold it in. All that's left is to get the pieces installed on the frame, and it'll be done. And here it is, the finished design. Got the corners all installed. Centerpiece is installed. And the map is framed. This project was fun. I'm glad I decided to record it so I could make a video and just share it with you, just in case you might enjoy it, or maybe even take some inspiration from what I've done. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.